Welcome to the Ultimate Perimenopause podcast. I'm Shawna and I'm here with my co-host Maggie Chilton, and we thought we'd talk about something that we experience in our practices every day, how to get the most out of your healthcare. Welcome, Maggie.
Hi, Shawna. How are you?
Awesome. I love this topic. It's something that we both talk about very regularly, and we thought we'd give you a little bit of a taste of our kind of discussion so that we can hopefully get you inspired to treat your healthcare system differently and advocate for yourself.
Absolutely. And I was just talking to Shawna previously about this particular topic. And funnily enough, this is actually in the Code of Ethics from the Canadian School of National Nutrition. That's how important this particular topic is to the health and the body, mind, spirit aspect of our clients. So do you want to introduce the topic? Everyone's dying to know, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we're talking about advocating for yourself with your healthcare system. And what that means is using your healthcare team as a consultant, doing your own research, coming in with questions, and taking an empowered approach to your own healthcare, your own lab testing, and your own outcome, which is definitely not the easy path. But, hopefully as we go through this discussion, you'll learn how important it is to actually get the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, and this is what actually was a turning point for me, was that when I was in school, learning our Code of Ethics, which basically says accepting full responsibility for the consequences of his or her own actions and taking responsibility for your choices. I learned what I needed to get tested, and I learned that if I did not go into my medical doctor's office and specifically ask for what I wanted and know why I was asking for it, very, very often it was brushed off. Oh, you don't need that. Why do you need that? And if you don't know why you need that, then they're not going to give you that testing. So it really helped me hone in on what was really important, what I needed to get tested, and then we'll probably talk about this later on, but get a copy of every single one of your results and your testing and keep them in a file. I'm sure you're the same. I cannot stress how important that is to have your own copy of your testing. And you should be able to have that.
Yeah, technically they belong to you, so that shouldn't be an issue at all. Let's just keep talking about that because I 100% agree. It's really important. And, a few reasons. Number one is if there's a trend in your blood work, your doctor may not notice it unless things are flagging as abnormal. So in a short consultation, they may not have time to review your last 3 years of blood work and to see that every year your cholesterol levels are going up 5 or 10%, or that your thyroid has been slowly trending to underactive and it matches all of your symptoms, or that your iron levels have been borderline for 2 years. So this is something that unless you're looking for yourself, you may not find. Now, it's okay to ask for help to go through these lab tests. It's okay to, do your own research. It's something as a naturopath that I really like to, to go through with my patients.
Sorry, we had a little bit of a glitch there on my end on the internet. So you were asking or saying about it's okay to ask for help in the testing or to look through the testing and sort of figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah, so that you can, you can do some research online, or you can find a healthcare provider who is happy to review them with you and what they mean. And that's not impossible to find. I think there are a lot of healthcare providers who like to work with you as an equal team player right now. It's something that in my own practice, I go through in big detail when we do lab testing is what it all means. And whether it's optimal, whether it's something that is close to flagging, whether there's been a change over time. And I really don't mind when people ask a ton of questions about these things because it's your body, and understanding what's working or not working inside is part of the process. Not all of it, but it's a huge part of it. So, that sort of brings me back to...
Yeah, I agree. And so you cut out a bit there. So I'm sorry we're having some internet issues today. I totally agree, because when you get your lab tests back, there's this range that they give you. Well, that's just the range of a number of people who are, within that range. That's not, as you say, it's not optimal. You could be within that range, but it's not optimal. And if you're not flagged on either missing out on something or some part of the healing process because the labs are telling the MD, for example, oh, you're fine, you're within this range. Whereas if you have a copy of your lab tests, you can see what the range is. Therefore, you can research it and see exactly what your optimum range is supposed to be, instead of somebody or your MD just saying, you're within range, it's fine, and you not knowing what that range is.
Yeah, that's extremely valuable with things like thyroid and iron. Hormones are a bit trickier though. And, given that we're talking, to women, the perimenopause years, I'm going to just put that out there because they are definitely harder to read in terms of optimal ranges, and the optimal ranges change with your age. So It's something that unless you're testing it on the right day of your cycle and you're looking at the right hormone levels, they are likely to come out in the reference range and nobody's going to say a thing. So that is something that you might need a little bit more assistance with, and something that, I'm working on a sort of downloadable guide as to optimal ranges, because this is so important.
So you're working on a downloadable guide, right? Will that be on your website, or will it come up in your newsletter?
It'll be in the website. Yeah, I'm just working on, optimal ranges for hormone levels, because this is something that just comes up over and over again. And I'm recognizing that a lot of people's family doctors don't understand optimal ranges either. So for example, with progesterone. So if you've ovulated, it's fine. Optimal progesterone is not simply ovulating, especially around fertility and especially with perimenopause. Same thing with estrogen. Like there's a huge range of normal with that. And, we need to look at, are you having like the estrogen storm? Is it extremely high? Is it quite low? And that's affecting a whole lot of other physical symptoms. And, and I really believe in lab testing, because this is how we get a baseline of where you're at. And we can also assess and monitor how things improve.
Yeah, I completely agree. I always say test, don't guess.
Right.
It's even as simple as vitamin D. Test your vitamin D before you start taking supplements. It's not I think I need 2,000 IUs or 5,000 IUs. Test it before you start taking a supplement. And I think another key to using the systems that we have, if you're going with an MD, even if you're going with a naturopath, but if you're going with an MD in particular, is if you have your lab testing and your dates for your own reference, then you can say in 3 months, let's say you've had your iron and your blood work tested. In 3 months' time, you will know to call and book an appointment, because I guarantee you your MD will say, oh, you're due to have your iron checked because it's been 3 months. So I know that from personal experience. So if you have those dates in front of you, you can mark them down on your calendar, and then you can call your MD and say, it's been 3 months since I had my testing. And I've been taking my iron supplements. I've been modifying my diet, modifying my lifestyle. Is it possible to get checked again so I know where I am, whether I'm, on track, whether I need to up whatever it is that I'm taking? I think that's a really, really good way for people to advocate for themselves too, and to keep the MD in the loop that, this patient knows what they need testing when they need testing it. So I think it kind of puts a bit of a faith and trust in the patient to know that, they're actually on track, or they know what's going on with their own body. So they tend to, if you go back to them and say, I think I probably need this testing because X, Y, and Z, they're potentially more likely to say yes, because they know that you've taken a vested interest in your health and you're actually seeing it through.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, definitely. And, likely you're going to have a positive response to whatever therapy that you do to deal with whatever issue, because you are invested in the results as well. But it is a new perspective that I would say, a generation above us is not accustomed to doing, to questioning their doctor or asking for anything. But the reality is that, our healthcare system is quite strapped. And for young-ish women who walk into a doctor's office looking quite well, they're not going to spend extra time with you unless you ask for it. So it is very important. I find actually women in their 30s get very much neglected for things like low iron and thyroid issues and hormone imbalances, because they generally look well, and there are a lot sicker people in the waiting room. Yeah. And it's quite sad, but the ages where we should be really proactive with our health, it's very hard to get the care that you might need.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right. You look healthy, but that's not to say that a lot of things are going on, and in a year or two, you're really going to see the effects of that. Whereas if we'd known beforehand, if you're subclinical or, something is underlying, it definitely could have been rectified and then save the health service, more money on testing or further procedures if it had been caught earlier, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that leads into something else that I often talk about, which is creating your own health timeline. So that's sort of looking back at your entire life and including any major health events or illnesses or medications, treatments, surgeries, as well as big life changes, and looking to see, what are the patterns there? What has flared things up? Where is the start of an illness? What is it potentially connected to? This information is unbelievably valuable in helping to decipher, some of these like undiagnosable, unknown, unnamed illnesses, because we can actually see how they started and when they formed. So for example, somebody might be having a reaction to something in their home, like mold behind the walls. And if we didn't do a careful health timeline, we wouldn't see that a lot of these health issues started within 1 year of moving into a certain location. Or, big stresses and life changes are huge precipitating points as well with health changes. And that's, again, another thing that you can do to link the pieces together for yourself, which again gives your healthcare provider, whether it's a family doctor or a specialist or a naturopath or a nutritionist, it gives them so much information in terms of how to treat you best, because you've sort of unlocked a lot of the whys.
Yeah, and one great way of doing that would be to, just to go to the dollar store or Indio Chapters, whichever you prefer, get yourself a journal, and whatever phase or stage you are in your life, start tracking. As you've talked about before, tracking your periods is also a really good one. Maybe, in the front you can track that, and then in the back you can track any life events, because guaranteed, if and when something happens and you go and see a naturopath or a doctor or a nutritionist, they will ask you those questions at the first meeting. I know in my forms, when people first come in, there's a whole life history that goes on there that could potentially, as you say, lead back to the client, say, well, it could potentially be because of X, Y, and Z. So I think that's a great idea to, wherever you are, start today to start noting down those things. And memory is selective sometimes. So if you have that with you, and those times when you're not thinking about anything, you're not super busy, something might come into your head. You think, oh, I remember when that happened. You have something, and a place to write it down. So I love that. And you can always, take it with you everywhere, or take it with you when you go and see your MD or your naturopath, and have those answers right there for when they do ask you those questions, which they should ask you those questions too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and similarly, knowing your family history in detail, and asking relatives who are still around, knowing, are there any early onset of health conditions that you should be aware of? Because this information we can use preventatively and proactively. And I would say the absolute key age to start doing that is in your 40s. So a lot of the women listening today, this is you, I'm speaking to you. This is the time where we start taking proactive steps to prevent health issues that may run in your family. And you can stop the diabetes, you can stop the heart disease. Cancer is a trickier one there. There are some, that I really feel we have very little control over. But at the same time, what my research shows is that, the treatment, the prevention, and all of that of 80% of our health issues has to do with basic self-care. the eating well, the getting enough sleep, managing stress, and moving your body. It's actually not much more complicated than that. But anyway, so knowing your family history, having good notes so that when you're meeting with your healthcare providers, you can do the appropriate tests and possible medical screening to look for early signs so that you don't get sick, as family members may have. Now, we're very good at that with breast cancer, but I find pretty much everything else, people are not so aware.
No, that they'll deal with it when it happens, kind of thing. Yeah. And that's, again, one thing that we're taught at CSNN is that, you know, you are responsible, as in the person, the client, as we call it, you would call it patient. You are responsible for the things that go into your body, the things that go on your body, you know, your body, mind, spirit aspect. So that's sort of another thing that we're talking about is that, you know, being your own health advocate is also taking responsibility for the things that you are doing in your life that are potentially harming you or healing you. So, you know, if you go to your healthcare provider, whoever that is, or nutritionist, and say, you know, I want to, let's say in perimenopause, I want to lose weight, I want to sleep better, whatever that is. It's the healthcare provider's job, quote unquote, to educate you and give you the information you need, but you're the only person who can actually do those steps and actually create that change. And I think sometimes that's lacking, where the client or the patient wants everything done for them. They want to have all the information, but they don't actually want to do the work that goes into creating that change, which you know, and it takes a long time, I think, sometimes for people to actually realize that part is that to see change, you have to make change and stick to it. Make it a lifestyle change, a life change.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
unfortunately, once you walk out of the clinic, or you come off your Zoom or your Skype, that responsibility is then on you to facilitate that in whatever way you can, to make that, you know, a priority in your life, I think.
Yeah, 100% agree. I talk about this in every first visit with patients that I work with, is that my job isn't to fix them. You know, my job is to educate them to take the best care of their body that they can, that they know themselves better than I ever will, and that I can be used as an educated consultant in the health field to teach them how to live a better life. You know, I also think of it, you know, I'm sure a lot of listeners here have teenagers, and I think of it as how do we get a teenager ready to live in the world? So, you know, the route isn't do everything for them and nag them until they eat their vegetables. Like, we have to actually, you know, same thing, like in the clinic, is we have to, you know, teach and inform and educate and show people how to do it better. You know, and it's a slower process, right? There isn't
Yes.
there isn't a pill for perimenopause. You know, we're undoing layers of things that have got our hormones to where they are, which, you know, is nutrition, which is movement, which is stress, which is blood sugar, which is gut microbiome, and all of those things. But on a really positive note, we're also working preventatively for a lot of other things at the same time. And we're truly making a change in the body, not just masking it with a pill to deal with a symptom.
Yeah. And you and I both have young children. You have some older, but young children. And by, you know, going on the journey that I'm particularly going on, and in the profession that I'm in, you know, we really are the educators, because the way our families eat and live, you know, potentially quite different to a majority of the population. But I think the small things that we can do within our own family, and not just tell our children to eat this, eat that, don't eat that, don't eat that. If we tell them why, I think that's a really good way to get them to think, oh, okay, now I understand. Rather, you know, it's the same with a client and a patient. If you say, don't ever eat sugar again, and you don't say to them why, they might think, well, okay, but that's not going to last, because they don't
No.
understand the repercussions of eating that sugar. So with our children, hopefully they can, you know, we hope we don't know whether it happens or not, I don't know. But then, I hear them talking in school, and, they have open discussions with their fellow classmates about the food that they eat, or the lifestyle that they lead, or, what they did at the weekend, which might have been going out apple picking or whatever it was. Whereas, the other children might have stayed in and played on their Xbox all weekend. So I think, if we're starting younger and younger to educate and give them the why, I think that's a really good way to move this and just move the energy and move the environment closer to how we want it to be, rather than just telling people what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yes. And then the other part is showing them how, right? So explaining why is something that I think I got quite stuck in my practice for a long time, is the big explanations and awesome treatment plans and great, and, lots of why, but the showing how is another huge part of that. Is, how do we make healthy nutrition work when life is going crazy? What are your 10-minute meals? What what are your options for ordering healthy food in when the week is going to be chaotic? And how do you plan for these things in advance? Because it's the reality. Like, we just have to ask the questions of what trips you up. Like, is it your emotional state? Is it your work stress? Is it that life is too busy? And we need to look at solutions and strategies for all of these things so that we are creating a long-term solution. Because it's never perfect. You never have like 3 hours to cook in a day, and to go for your workout and to do your meditation practice. So, that's something I talk a lot about is flexible consistency. So, okay, that's your perfect scenario, but what's an okay substitution when life is crazy? And, in a big city like I live in, there's a lot of amazing healthy food delivery options, ranging from ones you cook yourself to already prepared. There's a lot of ways of making it work when the circumstances are not ideal.
Yeah, and that's another way of being responsible, right? Because most people would just, I'm super busy, let's just get takeout. And they'll drive to their nearest take, whatever. But, by either being pre-prepared or thinking, hang on, I don't have enough time to do this. What are the healthier options that I have out there? Because it's my responsibility, not necessarily as a parent, but, if you don't have children, it's my responsibility to feed my body the best that I can at this point in time. And that's, you're being an advocate for your body. You're respecting your body by saying, yes, I need takeout, but I'm not going to go for whatever brand it is. I'm going to go for this option, which is a healthier option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, doing a fair amount of brainstorming to look at what are your best solutions in those circumstances, because sometimes in the moment you're going to fumble.
Yeah. And then it's also, the flip side is if you have no other options, being okay with that and owning it. And again, taking responsibility. And saying, okay, well, if I have to buy a pizza in or, whatever it is, today I'm going to be okay with that because I have no other options and I'm okay with that. And not beating yourself up because that's the only option you had.
That's true. And again, once in a while is not a big deal. We're aiming for, healthy living the majority of the time, but it doesn't have to be perfect. That extra 10% to get perfection is probably, or is 100% not worth the stress.
No. And I was actually listening to a YouTube video on Dr. Joe Dispenza today. And, he talks about, not being yourself. So sort of modifying your thoughts and breaking the habit of being yourself is his book. And one of the things he talks about, which I think could really come in handy with this podcast, is that he asks his clients to sort of, I think it's best in the morning, to sit down for 10 minutes in the morning and sort of write down how you want to feel that day. Do you want to feel happy? Do you want to feel joyful? Do you want to feel healthy? Do you want to feel empowered? And write that down and really feel in your body what that feels like. Everybody knows what joy feels like and happiness, and really focusing on that and trying to take that throughout your day. It's not always possible, but sort of try and take that throughout your day. And again, that's another aspect of being your own health advocate and aspect of taking responsibility for your own health, because, you know, what goes on in our heads affects our body and vice versa. So if we can start off the day with these thoughts of joyfulness, gratefulness, happiness, empowerment, then I think that can really help us through some, you know, potentially tough times during the day when you're having to make tough decisions on either food, lifestyle, you know, as you were saying, being flexible. You can't get your meditation or you can't get your workout in. Okay, well, I choose to be happy anyway. So I didn't get my 45 minutes or hour walk in. You know what? I feel great anyway.
I love that. Yeah, I really love that. And it is, from my experience, so difficult to do, to hold that.
It is. I'll put my hand up and say it's extremely difficult too. And it's like anything, it's called a meditation practice, you know, for a reason, because we have, and yoga practice, because we have to practice it, because none of us are perfect. None of us get it right all the time. And things change, every day changes. But you know, now in North America, as the mornings are getting lighter, it's so much, you know, nicer to sort of wake up when the sun is actually out or coming up, to be able to spend those 5-10 minutes just writing down how you want your day to go. I think it's very inspiring and empowering.
Extremely. Yeah. Because you're holding on, to your intended state as you're making decisions through the day. I love that. So I think we're going to wrap it up here, but just wanted to end with each of us giving you one reminder about how to be a proactive participant in your healthcare. Do you have a thought, Maggie?
I think for me, it's what we talked about to begin with. I think one of the most important things is to, whenever you get lab testing, get a copy and keep a copy for yourself. Actually, generally nowadays, if you go to Life Labs, etc., you have a copy of it. They email you the copy, or you can log in and get them. Keep a copy of those and have them with you. Maybe even place them with that book that we were talking about, where you're tracking your periods and your menstrual cycle, and then your family history. So you have everything all in one place that you can take wherever you need to go.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. So for me, what I would say is that I'd like you to start thinking about your healthcare providers as consultants, meaning you go in with your list of questions, you've got your research, and you are advocating for what you want and need for that appointment. And if you don't have a healthcare provider who can work with you, I would suggest finding one who can, or at least finding a naturopath or nutritionist who you can bridge that care with to fill in some of the gaps. Because you know your body better than anyone else. And, and it's your life. This is something that's extremely important to take in your own hands right now.
Yeah. And just as a side note, speaking as a nutritionist, again, it's within our code of practice and our scope of practice, code of ethics, that we need to work with other healthcare providers, naturopaths, MDs, physiotherapists, chiropractors, to give our clients, a look at their whole health. And you're absolutely right. If you have a healthcare provider who is not willing to work with other people to gaining you better health, potentially look at changing that healthcare provider to somebody who is more open to, a full scope of practice, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We would love you to subscribe to our podcast and leave a comment or a rating, review, and we will see you again next week.
Sounds awesome. I'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.